Okay, and it makes it hard. It makes it hard for us to actually to do this efficiently. We knew this. This was not a surprise. Before there was the COCOM, before there was the Combatant Command Cyber Command, we had something called JFCCNW, Joint Functional Component Command Net Warfare. It was kind of like a baby cybercom. I was the director, and I was working for the commander of STRATCOM at the time, Jim Cartwright, who's now the vice chairman. I can remember Jim and I going down in front of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, a pretty informal session. It was literally Jim and Mike talking to the senators, saying, please don't beat us up, don't hurt us, but we're going to be moving stuff in between that C&E and CNA thing. It's not dishonest. We're not trying to hide it from you, but it's just the nature of the work. Well, that's a work in progress. Now, let's jump from this creation of the command, which has some problems here, into some of the really core issues about cyber war. The first thing is, what constitutes an attack? Remember my triangle? Okay. Defense, nah. Exploitation, attack. In American military thought, frankly, in American legal thought, an attack is when you do one of those D things. Delay, deny, disrupt, destroy, degrade somebody's information. Over here, under exploitation, where you're just sucking, the contents of the Library of Congress out of some defense industrial base every other day, we don't call that an attack. We don't call that cyber war. And I mentioned earlier about we're kind of sloppy with our language. That's C&E. That's exploitation. That's espionage. States do that all the time. CSIS did a study late winter, and they asked citizens of first world nations, and they got it was a scientific survey, and they got good numbers and had confidence in the survey. Who is the most feared nation in cyberspace? And the answer was the United States of America. Without going into any great detail, we're actually pretty good at this. And the Chinese aren't the only ones doing it. I actually, one of the fellows doing the CSIS study was talking about down here, okay? By the way, let me talk for a minute about Chinese espionage, just before I get to this point. As an intelligence professional, I stand back in absolute awe and wonderment at the Chinese espionage effort against the United States of America. It is magnificent in its breadth, in its depth, in its persistence. I think they went to school on Gulf War I, saw their deficiencies, and have frankly decided they're going to build, buy, or steal what it is they need to make that military equation more equal. And although I have no more insight than you as to who is actually conducting these attacks, I understand the general public storyline is that there appears to be a Chinese hand in it, so it could very well be part of this macro espionage effort. Anyway, the folks at CSIS asked me, what should we do about the Chinese doing all this? And it was in the sense that, we need to take some sort of retaliatory action, that we at least got to issue a démarche or something, okay? And knowing my triangle, okay, and knowing what it means, my answer was, what should we do about the Chinese doing all this? I said, you should do what my dad told me to do when I was about 9 years old in Pittsburgh. Quit whining, act like a man, and defend yourself. So the language betrays us. And I'd ask you to be careful in the future when you talk about attacks. There's another really cute thing that happens inside this domain. I mean, you can actually extrapolate this defend, exploit, attack thing. You can actually kind of look through it as a lens and kind of go back into the old physical world. Okay, bear with me here. It takes a minute, but this is actually quite interesting. This is the intel corner, exploitation, right? And this is the ops corner, attack. In the physical world, and I'm a career intel guy, so I know this. In the physical world, intel is what you do before the ops. Okay? The J2 generally gets a lot busier much earlier than the J3, because the J2 has got to go out and develop the target and do all those sorts of things, right? And then he hands that information over to the ops guys, and then the ops guys put it together, construct what it is they have to construct, and then go out and conduct the mission, which almost always is far more difficult and certainly far more dangerous than the intel guy back here, perhaps annotating overhead imagery and picking out what we call DIMPs, desired mean points of impact, where to put the bomb. Okay? That's the physical world. Intel precedes ops. Ops is supportive of Intel. Intel is a supportive of ops. Intel is in a supporting function. The high-end activity is the operation. When you come to cyber. Come back to me with these two corners down here, exploitation and attack. The attack is always a lesser included capability of the exploitation. It is operationally and technologically far more difficult to reside on an enemy network for an extended period of time undetected. Always far more difficult to do that than to, I'm speaking figuratively here, kick in the front door and melt a cathode ray tube. Okay? And so even in our kind of operational construct, this domain puts different parameters on how it is we even think about military operations. We actually have a pretty good body of thought about defense. I mean, I'm talking not about technology and techniques. I'm just talking about what it is we think we want to do. I think we've got a pretty good idea of what it is we want to do down here on exploitation, since it is, frankly, signals intelligence, and we've got a rich history of that. Down here in this corner, for the attack thing, we're still looking for the big ideas. We're still trying to figure out what are the rules down here. I was told that in the new Cyber Command, about 90% of their thinking is going on down here about attack. 90% of what they're actually doing is up here in defense. And if any of you were in some of the small group meetings I was in during my last year or two in government, you would say, I'm really glad they got a lot of energy down here thinking about the attack thing. Because when we actually had to make policy decisions about operations in cyberspace, it was absolutely clear that technology and operational art were infinitely ahead of any policy structures on which we could base them. We were, in fact, when we would give a yes, we knew we were establishing precedent for something about which we had not really digested the ultimate impacts of that precedent being established. I mean, I've been in, take no offense to anyone in the room, but when you're down there at the highest levels of U.S. government trying to explain the elements of computer network attack to people like me and secretaries of this's and secretaries of that, I got to tell you, that technical expert who knows everything about it, who's explaining it in really, truly magnificent form, at about the third sentence, for most of the people in the room, he sounds like Rain Man. I have left rooms in which we have had a consensus, yeah, we're going to go do that. And when we've kind of done the after action, no two people who left that room agreed on what that was that they had agreed to. And look, I'm not blaming this on anybody. It's just that this is very difficult to understand because this fifth domain is just so different from the physical space in which we've kind of gathered up our patterns of thought. Let me give you one.